For 2 full years, 50 families paid their rent on time every single month. The problem was that not a dollar of it ever reached me. Instead, the money was quietly funneled into the hands of the very HOA board that was supposed to be protecting my property. When I finally uncovered what they had been doing, my first call wasn't to an attorney. It wasn't to the police either. The first thing I did was replace every lock they thought gave them power. Before this story was over, the people stealing from me would be the ones terrified of losing a roof over their heads. Before we jump into it, tell me where you're watching from today. Leave your country in the comments below. I enjoy reading every one of them. My name is Maravas. 2 years ago, my Uncle Lex passed away and left me a 50-unit apartment complex as part of his estate. At the time, I was living abroad, working a quiet government position that rarely invited questions. Since the building had been operating smoothly for years, I assumed everything would continue, without much involvement from me. My uncle had created a local HOA board to oversee daily operations, collect rent, coordinate maintenance, and handle tenant concerns. I had no reason not to trust them. Each month, money appeared in an account established by my uncle's attorney. The deposits were modest but consistent, predictable, reliable. I never looked too closely because there was never a reason to. The numbers seemed to line up with the reports I received. As far as I knew, the tenants were satisfied and everything was running normally. Then one completely ordinary Tuesday changed everything. I logged into the account to verify something unrelated and immediately felt my stomach tighten. The last rent deposit had arrived 11 months earlier. 11 months. I sat there staring at the screen, trying to convince myself I was reading it wrong. Nearly a full year had passed without a single payment, and somehow I had missed it. I called the property management number listed in the records. A man named Dale Renshaw answered. His voice was smooth, confident, and polished, the kind of voice that made people trust him without thinking twice. Dale told me there had been a restructuring process. He explained that rental income was temporarily being retained for future building improvements. He assured me a detailed report would be sent shortly. For a moment, I almost accepted the explanation. Almost. Something about the way he answered felt practiced, as though he had rehearsed the response repeatedly, like someone else had already asked the same question and received the exact same answer. So I booked a flight home. I never informed Dale that I was coming. The day I arrived, I walked straight into the lobby of the building I legally owned. Not a single person recognized me. Near the mailboxes, a tenant named Priya Anand stopped me and asked whether I work with management because she wanted information about renewing her lease. Instead of answering, I asked who she paid rent to. The HOA office, she replied. Same place everyone pays. Then I asked how much. The amount she mentioned was nearly twice what appeared in my uncle's records. My stomach sank. Over the next 2 days, I quietly went door to door. I told residents I was considering renting an apartment and wanted to learn more about the building before signing a lease. Again and again, I heard the same story. Rent payments were made to an organization called Crestline HOA Holdings. Late fees were enforced aggressively. Repair requests sat unresolved for months. One resident, a retired teacher named Walter Greaves, even showed me a thick folder filled with maintenance complaints and unanswered letters. No responses. No action. Nothing. 50 apartments. 50 tenants. Every single one paying rent month after month for 2 years into an account that had absolutely nothing to do with me. By my estimate, nearly $600,000 had vanished into an organization called Crestline. I needed answers. The HOA office was located in the building's basement behind a door marked management. When I walked inside, Dale Renshaw was seated comfortably behind a large desk, as if the entire property belonged to him. Beside him sat 2 other board members, Connie Albrecht, Trent Bishop. Both wore matching polo shirts embroidered with a Crestline logo I had never seen before. I introduced myself as the owner of the building. Dale didn't look surprised. He simply smiled. There's been some confusion, he said. According to him, ownership authority had been transferred to board 18 months earlier. I asked to see the paperwork. Without hesitation, he slid a document across the desk. The paper contained my uncle's signature and was dated 3 months before his death. It supposedly granted Crestline HOA Holdings complete operational and financial control over the property. There was only one problem. During that exact period, my uncle had been in hospice care. He wasn't capable of signing legal transfer documents. Honestly, he probably couldn't have signed a parking citation. I kept my expression neutral, but inside my pulse was pounding. What Dale didn't know was that my government position wasn't administrative work. I specialize in fraud investigations. More specifically, forensic document examination for the State Attorney General's office. For 6 years, I had studied forged records, altered contracts, and fraudulent signatures. I looked at that document for 3 seconds. That was all it took. The signature was fake. The pressure patterns were inconsistent. The ink aging didn't match documents from the same period. Whoever created it had access to authentic samples of my uncle's handwriting, but they clearly didn't understand how forensic ink analysis worked. I smiled. "So I'll need a copy for my records," I said. "Of course," Dale replied. He handed it over without the slightest concern. What he didn't realize was that he had just given me the piece of evidence that would eventually destroy everything he had built. For the next 3 weeks, I stayed silent. I returned to my normal routine and my regular job while quietly assembling a case most property owners could never build on their own. Using professional contacts, I obtained banking records and subpoenas. Then I started tracing Crestline HOA Holdings. What I found led directly to a shell company that had been registered 8 months before my uncle's death. My uncle's death, not afterward. That discovery told me something important. This wasn't an opportunistic scam created after he passed away. They had started laying the groundwork while he was still alive, sick, and unable to defend himself. The deeper I dug, the worse it became. I uncovered 3 additional apartment properties that followed the exact same blueprint. Different owners, different locations, but the same transfer language, the same suspicious paperwork, the same forged signatures. At that point, it became clear that Dale Renshaw wasn't managing a homeowners association. He was operating an organized fraud network. While I continued gathering evidence, the tenants paid the price. Walter's apartment suffered another ceiling leak, the 4th one in less than a year. Nothing was repaired. Priya received a formal lease warning after asking management too many questions about rising fees. Then Crestline increased rents yet again, blaming market conditions that seemed to exist nowhere except inside their own financial reports. Every instinct told me to expose them immediately. I wanted to walk into that basement office, throw the evidence on the desk, and watch everything collapse. But experience had taught me patience. If I acted too soon, Dale would have enough time to move money, destroy records, and disappear before the legal system could catch up to him. So I waited. I documented every transaction, every complaint, every forged document, every transfer. Piece by piece, I built a case so complete that when it finally landed, there would be nowhere left for him to hide. Then something happened that changed everything. One evening, Connie Albrecht called me. Her voice was shaking. She sounded exhausted, almost frightened. She admitted she hadn't known the transfer paperwork was fraudulent when she first joined the board. According to her, Dale had controlled everything from beginning. She told me that after she started asking questions about missing money, Dale threatened her and warned her to stop digging. Then she made an offer. She was willing to testify. That phone call changed the entire case. Until then, I had forensic evidence and financial records. Now I had an insider. With Connie's testimony, my document analysis, and the banking trail linking Crestline to the shell company timeline, I finally had enough evidence to move forward. Not as a confused property owner, not as an angry relative, but as a trained fraud investigator presenting a fully documented case. Once the evidence was filed, the hearing was scheduled surprisingly quickly. Dale arrived with an attorney and the same confidence he'd shown during our first meeting. His lawyer argued that the transfer agreement was completely legitimate. He claimed I was simply a distant niece attempting to seize control of property after inheriting it. Then it was my turn. First came the forensic ink analysis, then the registration records for the shell company, then the financial trail, and finally, Connie's sworn testimony describing how Dale instructed board members to backdate documents and support a false ownership narrative. As each piece of evidence was presented, I watched Dale's expression change. The confidence disappeared. The smile faded. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked worried, very worried. The judge didn't take long to rule. The transfer agreement was declared fraudulent from the beginning. Every action taken under Crestline HOA Holdings was invalid, and every dollar collected through that operation legally belonged to the rightful property owner, me, retroactive to the very first day. More than $600,000 that Dale believed was already as suddenly became a court-ordered debt. The judge ordered immediate restitution and granted me full authority to remove Crestline from the property permanently. There was another detail that made the ruling even more satisfying. Dale, Connie, and Trent had been occupying 3 of the building's most desirable units without paying rent. For years, their housing had effectively been funded by money taken from tenants. I personally delivered the eviction notices. Trent tried arguing. He complained. He threatened appeals. I calmly slid the court order across the table, mirroring the exact way Dale had once handed me his forged paperwork. Then I smiled. There's been a misunderstanding. I said, according to the court, you have 72 hours. Trent stopped talking. Connie moved out quietly. Because she cooperated and testified truthfully, the court showed her a degree of leniency. Dale received no such consideration. Fraud charges followed him out the door. As for the money, the court ruled that every cent of rent collected during those 2 years belonged to me as the verified owner. That included funds Crestline hadn't managed to spend. Fortunately, we froze a significant portion before it could disappear. The first thing I did was approve repairs to Walter's apartment. His ceiling was fixed within days. Then I rolled rents back to their original rates for all 50 tenants who had spent years being squeezed for extra money. The remaining funds stayed where they legally belonged, with me, because they had always been mine in the first place. One thing this experience taught me is that the people claiming to protect a community aren't always protecting it. Sometimes they're the ones causing the damage. They hide behind official titles. They hide behind policies. They hide behind paperwork. They hope nobody examines closely. Dale counted on nobody paying attention. He counted on everyone trusting the system. He counted on me staying overseas and never looking deeper. He was wrong. I looked, and when the truth finally came out, I made sure the people responsible lost every benefit they thought they had secured. Now I'm curious. If you had been one of those 50 tenants, would you have trusted the HOA's explanations, or would you have started asking questions sooner? Let me know where you're watching from today, and tell me what you would have done in the same situation.